Hello beautifuls, my name is Bo Yee and I am a mentor for survivors of abuse. If you want to learn more about one-on-one coaching with me or group coaching with me, please go to my website, ibelieveinloveagain.com. So for today's video, I want to talk about how to find a compatible therapist for yourself. This is a question I get a lot, and I have a lot of experience in this area because I have literally gone through, maybe five, six different therapists. A lot of them did not work out. They were not a good fit for me. And only now I have two therapists I feel like are amazing. They are both an amazing fit for me. But it took a lot of trial and error with literally, I would say maybe like a dozen therapists. So yeah, from that 12 therapists, I saw maybe only 5 or 6, and then from those 5 or 6, I just fired all of them except for the 2 I have now. So this is basically what I want to say. First of all, is that you really do have a choice. Some people don't really think about this. They just kind of say, okay, I need a therapist, and then they just kind of go with the one they land with right away. But if you think about it, finding a therapist who is a good fit for you is vital. It's of vital importance because of the type of trauma you went through. It was a relational type of trauma, right? When you were abused by someone, it was a relational type of trauma. So when you have a therapist that you work with, you want to make sure it's someone you feel comfortable with, someone you trust, someone who you feel respects you, someone you feel who cares about you. These are very important components to your healing journey. So if you happen to be with a therapist whom you feel is not respectful, they don't really get you, maybe they themselves feel are passive aggressive, because we have to remember that therapists are people and no one is perfect, including therapists. And so that's something to first think about, that you are definitely allowed to choose a therapist that is a good fit for you. You don't have to go with the first one you come across when you search for therapists. So I'll just kind of talk a little bit about my journey first. So when I was young, when I was living with my stepdad, my first exposure to therapists was kind of an interesting one because it was my stepdad who had the idea of putting my family into family therapy, which we didn't need. We needed CPS to intervene, and we needed him to go to prison was what we needed. We did not need family therapy. The reason why my stepfather kind of corralled us together and got us into family therapy was because he had like a plan the whole time to get me alone with him and get my mom out of the picture because he wanted to continue to abuse me in private. And so when he first got married to my mom, they started arguing right away, and he would actually try to call CPS on her to make her look bad, when it was crazy. When she was the good mother and he was the bad father, he would take us to therapy on purpose to try to find a therapist who would side with him and against my mom. The first family therapist we found didn't side with him. She sided with my mom, and so he fired her, and then we got another therapist, and this one did take to my stepdad's story and didn't believe my mom, and so he stuck with her. And later on, when he would fight for guardianship of me and my brother, because he had to, he really didn't want my brother whatsoever, he just wanted me. Those records that the therapist had were very beneficial to him, because they sided with him. They just, they were manipulated by him, right? So they didn't know that he was a child molester, but because he was able to manipulate them and trick them, the notes that they had on our family were inaccurate. Okay, so just to kind of paint a picture, the first couple of times I had interactions with therapists in a family counseling setting, they were not good experiences, because basically what I saw was, okay, my stepdad's able to, just basically try to befriend them, manipulate them. We're there for... I didn't understand why we were there to begin with, to be honest with you. It just felt like a waste of time. And therapy is supposed to be confidential, right? And so there were times when the family therapist would ask to see each of us alone in my family. So there was my stepdad, my mom, me, and my little brother. And there was a time when she wanted to see me alone. And I did, but I just felt like I couldn't really say what I wanted to say anyway, because right after the therapy session, my stepdad would grill me and say, well, what did you guys talk about? He just wanted to make sure that I spoke highly of him throughout the session. That was the whole point of the therapy session, to just continue to lie and tell him everything was perfect at home and my mom was a bad mom. I just said what my stepdad wanted me to say to my therapist. So initially I had a very bad experience with therapists, obviously, because I was forced to go by my stepdad, because he had a whole plan on how to manipulate the therapist to help him out later on in the future to win guardianship and adoption of me and my brother. And unfortunately, he did win adoption of me and my brother. And so growing up, like even after I ran away at age 19, when I ran away from home, got out of my stepdad's home, I didn't have a good feeling about therapists. I just thought, well, they're kind of dumb. They can be tricked. They side with people. They're not helpful whatsoever. And I realized what I had gone through in my past with, 8 years of molestation and rape and whatnot. But I just wanted to heal myself. I didn't want any help from these therapists. On top of that, my thing was, you know what, they might not have gone through what I have gone through, so how can they help me? They don't understand me. They don't know anything about, like, they've done their studies through textbooks, by going to college, but they didn't go through what I went through, so they can't possibly help me. That was my theory. And you know what, like, I think as a survivor, it is important to find a therapist who you think is a good fit for you. So for me, that is no longer a 100% necessary criteria that the therapist had to have been molested too. Otherwise, I don't feel like she can help me or he can help me. I don't feel like that's criteria that absolutely needs to be there. I used to think that. But anyway, right now I have two therapists. One is a regular talk therapist. She's like a marriage and family therapist, and she went through molestation when she was little, and she's a Christian, and for me those were important factors when I went out to seek a therapist last year. And at first I really felt like she was a great fit, but it's important for survivors to understand that sometimes we can have problems with trust. So this is what I recommend when you look for a therapist. First of all, know that you can choose and you can interview many therapists before picking one that you want to try out. Okay, and then after you pick one or two therapists that you want to try out, give it at least a few sessions, like 3, 4, 5 sessions before like making a final decision, like yay or nay. Because sometimes when we start going into therapy, like things come up for us. We might experience more triggers, more flashbacks, more emotions, more negative emotions. And it's possible that we can displace our negative emotions onto our therapist. And our therapist might actually be a great fit for us, but we just might be in such a raw emotional state that it seems easy to like place blame on our therapist or find little things about her or him that we don't like. When in actuality, like say 5, 6, 7 sessions later, when we have found better coping mechanisms to deal with our triggers, we might kind of have an awakening and see, oh wow, our therapist was actually great and she helped me through this process, and I was blaming her when it really wasn't, she really didn't deserve that blame, so that's why I think it's important to definitely, when you do hone in to just like 1 or 2 therapists that you want to try out, to really give them a chance. like 4, 5, 6 sessions, unless there's like an obvious like, oh no, this is absolutely not okay, like they really crossed a huge boundary, then no, I don't want this therapist, I want to try someone else. That's fine. But if it's something very subtle and you feel triggered by something subtle, like her tone of voice or something she might have said that rubbed you the wrong way, instead of just getting triggered and wanting to fire your therapist, I think it's more important to journal about it and be honest with yourself if the trigger was accurate or not. And also you can talk to your therapist. I really recommend having open, honest communication with your therapist, and see how she or he responds. And if he or she responds in a graceful way, and it helps you to then trust your therapist again, then you can see, hey, maybe it was your bad the whole time, that you were triggered and you placed blame on, oh, sorry about the plane, that you were triggered and you placed blame automatically on your therapist when he or she never deserved it to begin with. You know, it would just be a shame to like fire a therapist prematurely. And so, yeah, so after I ran away at age 19, I did try out several therapists because I was starting to open my mind to it. And like the first handful of therapists I tried out, they just were not a good fit for me. They didn't understand what was important to me. They just rubbed me off in the wrong way, like session after session after session after session after session. So it wasn't just like a one-time trigger and then I was like, nope, I don't like you. I just remember feeling like, no, it's just, this is not a good fit, you know, over and over. I just remember, like, there was one male therapist I had who told me, well, you know, the goal of therapy is to help you become a successful citizen in society. And I was like really confused because in my mind, I felt like I was already successful, because back then I felt very, this was when I was like back in the new age world. And back then I called like the universe God, you know, that was kind of my perception of God back then, which I no longer agree with anymore. But anyway, back then I really wanted to kind of have more conversation about that type of, you know, that sort of belief system I had back then. I really wanted him to honor that and understand me in that way. And I felt like what I was doing back then was successful in my eyes, in my definition of success at that time. But he didn't even want to listen to me. He just wanted to dismiss what I had to say. And he just said, no, money, having a job, having a career, that means you're successful. And I said, no, not to me. But he wouldn't even listen. So I fired him. And the funny thing was, like, I think a couple of months after I fired him, he actually called me and apologized for not taking into account what was important to me at the time. And I really appreciated that. So, you know, I just want to, you know, remind you guys again, therapists are not perfect people. Sometimes they can be hard-headed. They do have biases. You know, they're not perfect, you know. They have their own triggers, their own trauma, that they have to deal with. You know, everyone's gone through trauma. If you've been alive long enough on this planet, you've gone through trauma. Everyone's gone through just maybe different types of trauma, different types of pain and different types of struggles, but everyone's gone through stuff, you know. And even therapists, they're human, they have to go through their own things too. And when they're in a session with us, they have to be able to separate their struggles and whatnot, and their issues, and be able to focus on us. And sometimes therapists do a great job at that, sometimes they don't. So being that I have gone through so many therapists, I've had many bad experiences, I would say mostly bad ones, but I didn't give up. You know, the last two that I found, it took me a long time to find them. The way I went about searching for my most recent therapist, the two that I have now, what I did was I did an online search in my town, and I did some research on the types of modalities I thought would maybe be a good fit for me. So do some research on the different types of therapy. There's so many different types. And then when you do a search, you type in those types, those forms of therapy that you're interested in. You type in your zip code, and then like psychologytoday.com, they have a huge directory, and that was one of the websites I used. And then it'll populate a whole list of therapists for you to check out. So what I did, which I recommend everyone to do, I literally would call all the therapists that I thought potentially could be a good fit. I would call all of them, leave messages on all of their voicemail boxes, and just wait for them to call me back. And each therapist who would call me back, I would take notes on our conversation. I would ask them many questions to see if maybe they would be a good fit for me or not. And I would ask them, like, why do you think you can help me? Like, have you helped other people like me? You know, like, be very honest and blunt with your questions. You know, still be kind, of course, and respectful. But when you look for a therapist, look at it as though you're interviewing them, because you are trying to find the best therapist for you. And then once you do decide upon a therapist, then when you're in their office, yes, you go ahead and you allow them to use their processes to work on you, as long as they don't go against God or the Bible in any sort of way. Then, you know, then just allow them to try these processes out on you and see how it goes after like 4, 5, 6 sessions, before making a final decision. Like, okay, I just don't like her because I didn't like that she wore pink, you know, because that's like your own bias. And if you're, you know, traumatized by pink because your mother, who is your abuser, like wore pink all the time and she abused you, you know, that's not fair. That's just not fair. So it's very important to keep all of this in mind when you're looking for a therapist. Know that you yourself, you still have triggers, you still have things that you really need to work through, and you got to be careful not to put these things on your therapist when it's not accurate. And at the end of the day, you always want to like listen to your gut, like your gut feeling, if someone feels comfortable to you or not, if they feel like someone you can trust or not. You want to trust that. So I hope that helps. And also, if you are a believer, I do recommend that you pray. You know, you pray over the interactions that you've had with your therapist and ask the Holy Spirit to guide you in choosing the best therapist for you. And when you do find a compatible therapist for you, oh man, you're going to be so happy, because you're going to definitely experience healing at an accelerated a speed. And I would say trauma-informed therapy is even better. Like brain spotting, which I'm getting now, I'm finding that I'm making a lot more breakthroughs with the brain spotting than I am with the talk therapy. So I have 2 therapists because I'm kind of doing an experiment. I want to see which one works better on me. And so far I've had like over 20 talk therapy sessions, and I've had only like 3, 4 brain spotting sessions, and the brain spotting seems to be helping me have breakthroughs way faster. So I'm going to keep going with my experiment. But at the end of the day, it doesn't have to have 2, 3 therapists if they help with different areas of your trauma. That's okay too. You don't have to just pick one. Okay, I know it can get expensive, so if you can only afford one for right now, that's fine too. So just know you have options. There's another plane, but you have options. There's no like cookie cutter way on how to like go about your recovery journey. Yeah, there's no cookie cutter way. But if you can, you know, if you can afford it, why not have 2, 3 therapists, you know, and work on different parts of your trauma? Why not? And so after you get to a certain level with your recovery, so therapy helps with your past, you know, all your past issues. If you have any mental issues, they can diagnose and treat you. But once you get to a stage where you're functioning, you're able to function in society, you can hold a job, you can like, you know, afford a place to live, and you can be consistent with these things, then what's very helpful after this stage is to get more coaching, which is what I offer. I offer coaching to survivors. So coaching is more about basically working on your goals, things that you want to accomplish, you know, for your future. So yeah, there's a lot of people that I work with who like they are both in therapy and coaching at the same time, and that's completely fine if you feel like you're able to kind of balance both of these things in your life. Then for other people, they're comfortable with having just coaching. They feel like that's all they need right now, and that works for them, and that helps to get their needs met. And so I've had a lot of coaching myself, a lot of therapy. Coaching is amazing. It's so future oriented, and for me it really fuels me. It really gets me excited. It helps me to like tune into like what's important to me, what my values are, what my passions are. So back to what I was saying before, if you are able to like get the means together, I would recommend getting several therapists, several coaches, and really work on your recovery. you know. But again, if money is an issue, you might have to choose one or the other for now, until you build your finances. If finances is an issue for you, get my free ebook. It is called Financial Reprogramming for Survivors of Child Sexual Abuse. Don't let your past keep you broke. It's a very powerful book from what I've been hearing from the readers who've been giving me feedback. I share really deep parts of my story I've never shared on video before. It's all in the book, of how deep in darkness I used to be, financially, emotionally, spiritually, and where I'm at now, and all the steps I took to get to where I'm at now. And so, yeah, because a lot of people, a lot of survivors, I've noticed they struggle a lot with their finances, and it stems from this constant feeling of unworthiness, which of course came from their abuse, you know. And it's really unfair and unfortunate, because let's not live, you know, our lives as adults as if we're still being abused now. Like, we have to heal from the past to be able to live our lives fully now. It's really important to realize we are worthy in God's eyes. You know, when we follow God, you know, he reminds us that he loves us unconditionally. And once we realize, wow, we are worthy in God's eyes, like, I am his child, I'm his daughter, I'm his son, he loves me. And so, you know what, it's okay for me to have money to not just survive, but to thrive, so I can do even better work for God, you know, for God, my Lord and Savior. So when we start to like heal from my past and have a healthier perspective on reality, then we don't have any more money blocks, abundance blocks, you know, because these things can really hold us back. Because everything I just mentioned, you know, having more therapists, having more coaches, these things do cost money. And so if it's just money that's holding you back from getting the help that you need, that's very unfortunate. But the good news is that you really can heal from your past, and you can reprogram your brain so that you're no longer like, you know, being manipulated by Satan, and you're not falling for Satan's lies. And with a lot of work, you know, with communing with God, and a lot of work with your own effort, you really can heal, and you can reprogram yourself so that you have a healthy relationship with money, a healthy relationship with, you know, just how you view yourself, and how you are in relationship with God. You know, a lot of survivors too have a lot of issues with spirituality, with God, the Bible, Jesus, all of that, because of the way they were raised, and all the spiritual abuse that they've experienced in the church, or even by their parents and their family members. Because if people were harsh with you, and if they like told you, oh man, you just lied, so you're gonna go to hell, or you're this or you're that, so you're gonna go to hell immediately because you did that, like, that's not what the Bible says at all. And a lot of people twist the Bible and try to create fear in people, to control them, to overpower them. And so if you've experienced anything like that, I'm very, very sorry. And just so you know, they were wrong, absolutely wrong. And this is not what God preaches whatsoever. In fact, the Bible is the biggest love story in the world. There's no other love story that's more powerful than the Bible. And it's beautiful. It's full of unconditional love. And so if anyone tells you it's about hate or fear, that's not even true. But we'll go into more of that next time. But I just kind of want to hop on and let you know kind of my viewpoint on how to find the best therapist for you. This was my experience, and it really worked out for me. And so I encourage you to just be bold, be brave, interview a bunch of therapists. I mean, dozens and dozens. Like, a lot of them might not even call you back. Some of them, for whatever reason, maybe they didn't get your message, maybe they just lost track. You know, people are busy sometimes, or maybe they're overbooked, they don't have time to have more patients, whatever the case may be. So that's why it's very important to leave messages on a lot of voicemail boxes for a lot of therapists, and just interview them and wean them down to like the top 2, top 3, and then from there see if you can you know, find the best from there. But if you can have more than one, then go for it, you know. But if you have to choose one, that's the process for now. All right, beautifuls, I will talk with you later. God bless you, and talk with you soon. Bye.